Okay, so the square body Chevy problem. We all know the gas tanks sucked. They're metal, you get a lot of debris in them and stuff. So, and then if you let them set for a long time, don't even try to start it. Take the tank off, replace it, clean it out, whatever. But a lot of things about the square body fuel tank, when you go to do them, there's a couple little things I've picked up along the way that I like to do, so I figured I'd share it. I'm not a professional. This is nothing like that. It's just to try to help some people out. So I've went through this several times. So first we'll do here, and anytime you take your tanks off, you always find that strip that goes over the tank and under the tank on both sides is shot. It's, it falls apart, it looks like roofing paper. A lot of times people will try to use roofing paper for that. That is not going to prevent moisture. So here's what I've got. This is made by 3M. It's made by Scotch. So I'll go over that. It's a 3M product though. I'll go over that in a second. But it's a double-sided tape basically, and it's wide, and it's probably 3/16 of an inch in thickness. And it works good because once your straps go around this and hit against it, they'll seal to the strap and not let moisture get in between both surfaces. So I like to use that for that. It's easy to use and it's not hard to get. This is the product, Scotch professional grade. This is used in a lot of plumbing applications for like copper that's going to be put in concrete. Obviously you don't want to bury copper in concrete without wrapping it in something. A lot of people use duct tape. That's not good enough. So that's kind of what I use for that. Okay, the next problem that you have with the square bodies is to find a vent hose or a filler neck hose. So we'll start there. There's your vent hose and your filler neck hose. And I, by the way, like to date my tanks. If I take it off 10 years from now, I'd like to know what year I put it on in. So I date them up there right by where the hose goes in. No one can see it. But the vent hose has a 90 in it, and a lot of people will try to get radiator hose, and you don't want radiator hose because it's going to have gas fumes going through it. Just because there's not going to be gasoline going through it, and sometimes there will be when you're filling up and it pops off, it'll run back down this. And that tubing starts to come apart and get into your fuel system, and you obviously don't want that. So that the vent tube has a 90 in it, so to say. So everybody tries to bend that, and that's why your pump keeps clicking off and all kinds of crazy stuff. This here is made for that PEX plumbing. I like these. They're better than the barbed fittings, the old school ones, because the old school ones were a lot longer and they were barbed, but they were a lot longer, so it still gave you a problem. You would have to saw some of it off to make it work right. But that can be done too. So if you get a fitting that sticks way out here and you don't need that much extension, get you a hacksaw and just hacksaw it off. But these PEX fittings work great. I mean, they fit right into 5/8 like you wouldn't believe, clamp right down. And that gives you your 90 that goes up into your filler neck without having to order from, say LMC or whatever. I did order my filler neck hose from LMC, basically because the old one's so bad, but I'm going to use it and I'm going to make a template out of it. It's another thing that a lot of people do is you can take your old filler neck hose off and you can go up to your parts store and try to find a radiator hose that has that bend in it. Radiator hoses are not made for gasoline to go through. They're not. So, and then someone would say, well, what on earth would have a big hose like that other than a fuel tank? But there's other types of fuel filler hoses, in your parts store. So if you've got a good guy at your parts store, a lot of times they'll let you come back there and they'll let you try to match one up. So you just find one, and it might be a foot longer on each side, but you find one that's got that bend in it, and you cut the hose to, use yours as a template, and you cut your hose. Other than that, some bulldozers, tractors and trailers, rigs, semis, they have filler neck hoses that are that diameter in some areas. So there's a lot of options. So if you just go back there and look, but just don't use a radiator hose. I wouldn't suggest it, Anyway, I don't know what gasoline really does to a radiator hose, but I do know I have took hoses off of stuff before, and you would find a residue in it that would leave a tar on your skin. So you don't want that going through your engine, into your carburetor, and your valves, everywhere else. So the filler neck hose was one of the main things to try to get that 90. Everybody tries to take these and just take a regular piece of tubing. Sorry about my workspace here. I'm actually in my shed right now because of the weather is bad here. But a lot of people try to take this and bend it, and over time it'll just collapse right off. If you are going to try to do that, maybe get the stuff that's made for high pressure fuel, because it don't bend as easy. It don't collapse as easy as regular tubing. But not coolant hose. It's got to be fuel line. So this here, you can pick it up at O'Reilly's, any of your part stores. It tells you on there it's good for up to 50 psi. Old carburetor motors, maybe 5 to 7 pounds of fuel pressure. It's nothing. Okay, your next problem is on these sending units. Everybody has a problem with these sending units. You can buy a brand new gas tank, brand new sending unit, put it together. 5 years later, you got the same problem. You take it apart. This is rusted to beat crap. You can't do nothing with it. You can't take it apart. It just tears to pieces. For one, right here, what I've seen is this is my fuel sender that I ordered. O'Reilly's carries these. About any of the part stores you get to, it's going to be the same part, different box, pretty much. But here's one problem that I don't like, is you see how the connector is just bare steel. So you obviously don't want to spray a bunch of paint over that, because you see I painted my tank. You don't want to spray a bunch of paint in there, you'll lose your ground. But so this is what this should have looked like. It should have had a heat shrinked connector on it, like that heat shrinks around it. So it's either change that out, cut it, make your own, and that way you got a corrosion inhibitor there, and then you would put some grease up in that to keep moisture from getting up in it. Or you can take simply some heat shrink tubing, pop that off there, slide this up over it, bring it back down, and then heat that up. Do not do this with gasoline in the tank. This is a new gas tank. I don't have no worries about any kind of ignition here. So, this is only for new tanks. So if you had an old tank you were getting by with, then yeah, you definitely want to use this connector here. Take the wire, heat it on it away from the tank, and then come back up, plug it back in, put grease in it to keep the corrosion out of it. Okay. But the heat shrink, I like the heat shrink a lot too. And then it's the same as this end. A lot of people tries to paint stuff like this, you can't do it. Where this touches metal at, it's got to be kind of bare steel. Well, once you get it bolted on and you establish that you have a good ground with a test light, then go ahead and paint the area around it. And the idea is to seal it up around it and on the back side of it so moisture can't get in between these two surfaces and cause rust. A lot of other options there. Here is another problem everybody has, is the factory connector on your truck is made to just come over here and snap onto this. That's just like a beveled point connection right there. You can take a tap and die set and you can actually thread this. You can actually take it and get you can cut decent enough threads in it. Don't get crazy. And you start out light, but go slow, because you don't want to tear that up. You don't want that to rotate inside the tank. Okay, that's you don't want it to rotate inside the tank. But you can actually thread this a little bit and get one of those old body nuts over it. And you take that body nut and just clamp a fitting like this, a butt connector like this down on there. Electrical connector, I mean to say. This one's obviously too big. It's the only one I got to use as a reference. But they make these in a lot of different sizes. Your smaller one's probably going to be the best for this. But you can actually thread this. You can cut a little bit of threads in the tip of it there and use an old, like an emblem nut. Used to come on a lot of your emblems that come off your fender would have a little nut on it to kind of cut its own way. And you can actually tighten your connection up on there like that if your factory end's not good enough. But yeah, definitely the tape, no matter what. I love it. It works great. Yeah, sure, some stuff's going to fly up off the ground and hit it, but it's going to keep corrosion from getting in between the straps in the tank and keep the tank straps from rubbing back and forth and wearing a hole in it. As far as painting it goes, when you get them, you got to realize there's not much on them. You know, they don't really care how long they last. But rough them up a little bit if you can. You know, just a scotch bite pad will be fine. Just rough it up a little bit and then hit it with a coat of primer. If you have the ability to spray it, then sure, spray it. You know, if I had the ability to do that, then I would, but I don't have that ability. But I just used implement paint, just regular implement paint. You can get it at Tractor Supply. You can thin it up a little bit with some lacquer thinner. It makes it brush on a lot easier. And I brush painted that tank, and it'll last way longer than it would if you sprayed it. Obviously, it's not show car quality or nothing, but it will last way longer than if you shaker can it. Shaker cans, you're not getting a whole lot. It may look good for the first 6 months or so, but after that, it's not gonna rinse off good or look very good at all. So I like to brush that on. I'm looking for the can here. I don't see it. But I like to brush that on and get it in there good. You know, definitely want to prime it though. They kind of got a little bit of prep on it. It'd be nice if they would make these out of plastic. They have the ability to do that now, but no vendor that I know is doing it at this point. But I just use this tractor and implement paint, oil base for sure, up underneath something like that, gloss black. You can get flat black, get whatever you want. This is the part number for the sending unit I got. It's a FG05B. Has only a 2-line unit, so some of these are 3 because you have a return fuel coming into it. You can actually upgrade this. You can go to a 3-line, run your own return line all the way up to the fuel pump, but then you have to get a fuel pump that is built with the return in it. You know, some people say these trucks will use more gas without the return. That, as long as your carburetor's tuned right and stuff and everything's right and you're not running rich, then you don't have nothing to worry about returning. So that's just one of those things, whatever floats your boat. I like originality. I like to keep them original. I don't want to be modifying nothing. Mine's a 2-line. I got the vent and I got the pressure. So, you know, that's your vent, and then your pressure line's a 3/8 line. This one's 1/4 inch. A lot of people get 5/16 for that. When you measure this between here and here, if it's a 1/4, that's your line. Your pipe size is back here. That ridge is to help hold your hose on there. But I would say if I had to, you know, I had a couple buddies that actually said, man, you should do a YouTube video, you know, and I was like, yeah, because they've done a few, and, you know, and 5 years later they got them back off, and this is all junked up again. But the best thing you can do is once I get my heat shrink on here and stuff, and I get this the way I want it, I might even upgrade this wire a little bit. I kind of like a better wire for a ground that's going to be buried up underneath the bed of a truck for years. So I like something that's a little more durable. You know, that's probably a 16 gauge wire. It don't need to be much bigger than that, but at least needs to be weatherproofed. You know, you at least need to keep the moisture and stuff out of that. But once I get the heat shrink over this, or if I decide to put that connector on there, I haven't made my mind up yet. Once I get that where it's, you know, good, you know, obviously when you paint it, you want to tape all this stuff off. You don't want paint on this connection. You don't want paint on this, you know, common sense. You gotta have a connection. You don't want paint out here where your hose is going to go on at. Right here where your tubing is going to go on at. You don't want paint on that. It could actually cause a leak, you know. The vent you wouldn't have to worry about so much on older vehicles, but on your fuel line, obviously you wouldn't want no cold leak there or nothing. So leave that bare, you know, and that's pretty slick right there. I've been known to even take a Scotch-Brite pad and kind of scuff that up a little bit right through there before I put my hose on. This one here I probably won't, but some of these, they got some sort of coating on there. The slickness, I don't really like that. You know, that's a hard tank to take back off to risk it, so you want that hose to seat right. Don't over tighten your clamps. Everybody wants to over tighten a clamp, it'll break it. But other than that, I would say the best thing that I would recommend doing would be to just take some regular axle grease, any type of grease gun, any type of grease, and just squirt this whole area right here full of grease all the way around it, and then smear some out here. Smear grease all the way around out here, all over it, and get a good coat of grease all over this ring. And then around this outside edge here, you can see how I made sure that I got paint up in that crack, to keep the moisture out of setting in there. That's where it's going to set in at and just destroy stuff. But if you just smear axle grease all the way around this and all over top of it, when you ever have to take the tank back off, you just take some parts cleaner, brake cleaner, whatever, spray that off real good, wipe it off, blow it off with air, and that'll come out of there like the day you put it in. It'll really last a long time. I'm not joking. A lot of people think, well, that'll wash off. Not a lot of water gets up here. Some stuff does get up here. When you take it off, you'll find dirt and dust and settlements over time. But no matter what, that grease will serve as a protective layer to help keep some of that contamination out of there, and then you just blow the grease out of it and clean it out real good, and that normally comes apart really easy. But yep, just axle grease. Don't leave this connector right here inside of a year or two. That'll rust off right here, and it'll just rust off. It's not going to take it. That's made out of nothing. All this stuff was made in Taiwan, I think. That should have definitely been if they had to go through any sort of quality issues, they would have made them put some sort of a protective, connector on there. That's what, as far as my quality goes, that's how I would want it. And then you would pack that full of grease to keep any intrusions out of that. But here, if your factory thing's broke, you can get these still. You can order them. It's a lot of Radio Shacks. You could probably find an electrical connection that will go over that. It's just knowing where to look. Going to your dealership's not going to do no good. They don't care about selling parts old enough for classic vehicles. But finding that little pigtail, a lot of people go through heck, and they try to wrap it around there and solder it and all kinds of crazy stuff. Just get you a tap and die set, and take your die and get you a couple threads on there, just a starter threads, and get one of those fender screws. You can get them at Fastenal, you can get them about any hardware store, and run it down there with that, and so it's solid, and then protect that with some grease, to where it don't get no corrosion on it. It's actually brass, so it's pretty good about not corroding. Normally your connector that plugs on it breaks. So that's all I got. Had a couple people ask me to throw this out there, kind of help you. But again, I love this stuff. It does really good, and it lasts a long time too. This can be buried in the ground. So as far as a moisture barrier, something to keep corrosion, because your strap goes up over here and comes all the way around this, and your water and stuff penetrates that and gets in there and rusts these tanks out real bad right up in this area. Unless you're not in the rust belt. But other than that, hope this video helps somebody. But the main thing is your vent hose. Don't just try to bend it and kink it. Go to your local plumbing store and get you a fitting. It's easy as can be.